I remember a human trying to explain the concept of a dark roast to me once, and at first I thought they had been smoking too much Athenian magma crystal. But the more they went on about their disgusting bean brine, the more it sounded like something I might like to try just for the novelty. Perhaps I thought, if I at least took a sip, I could convince them that its putrid aroma paled in comparison with the deep and invigorating broth of a slogmar slam. Nothing beats the warm, chunky ooze of a slogmar slam, you see. But these humans truly held the conviction that vegetable water was a superior choice for a waking slurry. Pathetic and offensive, bordering on sacrilege. I really shouldn't have humored them, but I had my pride and faith in the slam to prove, and so I tried it. The dark roast. The dried-up, powdered, watered-down bean broth that the humans so revered and abused. And you know what? It was delightful. At merely the first gulp, the viscous glide of the rehydrated plant powder soothed and pacified my palate. And when the cascade of bland, hearty liquid lapped gently on my back set of tertiary tongues, I knew that the Slogmar Slam was totally finished as a beverage. More! I shouted to the fleshy imp who'd provided me. But they merely shook with fear and stammered something about supply and demand. I shouted back that my demands were a lifetime supply of dark roast, or that I would be roasting their planet to a dark and ashy crisp, that I would be sprinkling on my morning trug brine to make up for the sudden lack of supply and demand. One of their guards pointed a primitive ballistic blaster at the hardiest part of my cranium, showing a sincere lack of respect for my wit, and then told me to chill. A strange climatological-based insult of some kind, I'm sure. I merely laughed, slammed my ichthalnum on the table, and told them to begin suckling when ready. Needless to say, I didn't exactly contribute anything positive or constructive to xeno-relations that day. But if you ask me, bulbous endoskeletal beings like humans have never really contributed anything positive or constructive before the advent of the dark roast. The cycles went by, and I returned to hunting Ralgathi death-scale marmots for food and blood at my family's 5 quintillion-acre star allotment with my 300,000 brood siblings. Each day, another hunt. Each day the same as the last. Each morning a new blob of trug brine on my plate, and another cup of slogmar to remind me of the haunting absence of dark roast in my life. It wasn't enough. The slurpy slop of our tried and true liquid stimulant seemed only mild and pedestrian to my now awakened taste buds, and my flagellating tonsils now screamed each night that they did not succor themselves with the rustic zenith of that steamy vegetable slush so cherished by the earth beasts. My siblings largely dismissed my tales of the human brew as a whimsy. Some thought that I had contracted some kind of lobe weasel, and that my thoughts were being influenced by the weasel's weak blood. I tried to tell them that lobe weasels don't exist, and that only intravascular roach mites could weaken the blood. But they didn't listen to that either. Possibly because they preferred to remain ignorant about the dark roast. Possibly because I had eaten several hundred of their ears during last weekend's evisceration tournament. Who can say for certain? Thankfully, tens of thousands of my dear cousins from a neighboring star allotment were preparing for a nice quiet weekend of pillage and looting, and were more amenable to my plans of bean broth acquisition. Together, we swarmed forth hastily towards the nearest interplanetary confectionery, prepared to do battle with the bald ape creatures of Earth to secure our bounty of crushed vegetable seeds. We had steeled ourselves for a gruesome battle, shouted our mightiest prayers to the gore ghosts of old, and even held death skirmishes to awaken our taste for blood and thin the weakest of our number. But when we arrived at the diminutive interstellar drive-in, What we saw chilled us to the bone. Not only had the putrid primates preemptively surrendered, but they had carted out vast quantities of the dark roast for us to plunder at our leisure. Several of the spongy whelps even taunted us with shouts of, "You know it comes free with breakfast, right?" Possibly to cover the shame of their cowardice, possibly because they were so affluent and powerful that a heaping of such precious powder was as nothing. We quickly gathered our bounty and left, and I sat alone, quietly wondering just how mighty the humans must be to secure such endless quantities of the magic plant dust without even bothering to fight for it. Never could I enjoy a full hearty sip of dark roast the same way again. For although it tickled my taste glands just so, and warmed the back of my viscous matter intake canal, from thenceforth I would only ever sip in silent terror. For if such was the breadth of their supply, then what, oh what, would be the weight of their demands?